Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm grateful to Ben McPherson. I now know that I have tenements in my constituency. I hadn't previously twigged that a block of 4 houses on 2 floors sharing a common stair would qualify as a tenement. So I will go away and have a wee look at the implications of that in future. And indeed, it has been an interesting debate in all sorts of interesting ways. I want to just pick at a few wee things. And one of the ones which we've spent comparatively little time debating is district heating. And we recognise that the targets previously set look unlikely to be met. And in particular in the North East, we have perhaps a unique opportunity, and that is geothermal heating. I had the privilege as a minister to visit a Stagecoach bus depot to see their geothermal heating. They had 2 boreholes, went only 100 metres down to enable them to pump water down to the bottom of the hole and get it back up, and it heated this large garage where, even with snow on the ground and the doors open, it was really too hot inside the garage. Now, the cost of doing that about 10 years ago was something in the order of £40,000. Not a huge amount of money for a heating proposition for a bus depot of that kind, but considerably more than I think most domestic people would consider investing. But on the other hand, start to think of perhaps 10 houses sharing such a facility, and you start to get into the realms of economic possibility. I, however, in looking at the subject, find that there are some practical difficulties, and that is in the subject of way leaves. In other words, taking utility supplies across other people's property. And way leave, statutory undertakers can get way leaves, and they are rail, light rail, tram, road transport, water, port, canal, inland navigation, dock, harbour, pier, lighthouse, airport operator, and supply of hydraulic power. But one of the things that's missing from the list of statutory undertakers is suppliers of heat. So therefore, in looking for a way leave to transport heat from one place to another, you don't appear, on my research, to have available the way leave condition. Now, I have heard from Mitchell and Tyres in Dundee, who wanted to transport heat, that proved to be a difficulty. So I think there's a legal issue. I'm also uncertain as to whether this may also still be a reserve power. And I'm unclear about this, to be absolutely candid. We have powers under Section 9 of the Electricity Act 1976, which allows us to legislate for the liquefaction of offshore gas. But none of the other powers that might cover this appear to be devolved. But there is a lack of clarity, and my research is not necessarily final or complete. So I think there are some opportunities for looking at how we might make district heating, particularly in the North East. We have one very good example in Aberdeen, but it's quite a different character. But I think we have other opportunities that we might look at. Oh, and geothermal isn't just a North East issue, although Mons Grampus and the granite that therein provides particular opportunities. I'm going to join Gail Ross in outbidding Graham Day. When my wife got our insulation in our roof void taken from 200 millimetres up to 600 millimetres in rural Bamshire, they came from Lanarkshire to do it. But I outbid her because they had to come twice, because they didn't bring enough material the first time, and my wife wouldn't let them in the house until they turned up with enough. So they actually had to do that journey twice. So I claim precedence over Gail Ross. But there is a serious point inside putting that insulation in a rural single-storey dwelling, which is never going to be EPC-C because of the way it's constructed. It more or less cut our fuel consumption, which is kerosene, by 40%. Just the simple act of putting that insulation. In fact, it took us a full week tweaking the thermostats and the radiators to get the temperature down to an acceptable level, because we were roasting with that additional insulation. Were that sort of intervention to be installed in all rural houses, that I think would be great. The government has done a great deal of that. It was a government-funded scheme. It didn't cost us anything at all. Let me just finally, Presiding Officer, talk about tax incentives. We've had a number of comments on that. I just returned to the intervention I made earlier in the debate that we did have in the 2009 Climate Change Act, which I had the privilege of taking through Parliament. We did put climate tax incentives for improving your house, but it relied on councils bringing forward schemes. Not all of them by any means did so. In fact, I'm not sure that very many of them did. So the track record of tax incentives based on houses is at the moment showing a not proven verdict, I would suggest at best, as a way forward. And I just end, Presiding Officer, by saying I'm a wee bit disappointed that the Tories are seeking to delete from the government motion that the whole economy gets a £10 billion value. I would have thought the Tories would have been quite interested in that sort of number. I certainly am. Go to it, Minister.